Marxism. Developed in the mid-19th century by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels during Europe's rapid industrialization, Marxism arose as a response to the harsh social and economic conditions created by early capitalism. Drawing on German philosophy, British political economy, and French socialist thought, it presents history as a series of class struggles, with capitalism seen as the latest stage in conflict between owners of the means of production, bourgeoisie, and the working class, proletariat. Marx predicted capitalism's internal contradictions, such as overproduction and worker exploitation, would lead to its eventual collapse, paving the way for socialism and ultimately a classless, stateless communist society. Central concepts include dialectical materialism, surplus value, and alienation, all used to explain how economic forces shape politics and culture. Marxism became the theoretical foundation for later socialist and communist movements worldwide and inspired diverse adaptations in the 20th century. Marxism-Leninism. Developed in the early 20th century as Vladimir Lenin reworked Karl Marx's theories to fit the realities of Tsarist Russia, an overwhelmingly agrarian empire marked by autocratic rule and a relatively small industrial working class. Unlike classical Marxism, which anticipated a spontaneous proletarian revolution in advanced capitalist nations, Lenin argued that Russia's conditions required a tightly organized vanguard party to cultivate revolutionary consciousness and direct the struggle. He promoted democratic centralism, vigorous internal debate followed by strict unity in action, and envisioned a dictatorship of the proletariat as a temporary socialist state to dismantle the old order. For Russian revolutionaries facing repression, weak industrialization, and a politically inexperienced proletariat, Marxism-Leninism offered a practical strategy, disciplined leadership, and centralized power as the means to overthrow the Romanov monarchy and establish a socialist government despite Russia's pre-capitalist economy. Stalinism refers to the political system and set of policies that developed under Joseph Stalin's leadership of the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953. It took shape after Lenin's death amid economic devastation, political instability, and the challenge of transforming an overwhelmingly rural society into an industrial power. Distinct from classical Marxism and Lenin's own approach, Stalinism emphasized rapid industrialization, forced collectivization of agriculture, and the doctrine of socialism in one country, rejecting the expectation of an immediate worldwide revolution. To achieve these goals, Stalin built a highly centralized one-party state with an extensive security apparatus. His rule became infamous for its brutality: mass purges of party members, widespread political repression, show trials, the gulags, and famines such as the Ukrainian Holodomor, all of which caused millions of deaths and deep scars in Soviet society. Trotskyism, a branch of Marxism developed by Leon Trotsky in the early 20th century, shaped by his role in the 1917 Russian Revolution and the subsequent power struggle in the Soviet Union. Distinct from Stalin's later doctrine of socialism in one country, Trotskyism advocates permanent revolution, the idea that socialist revolutions must spread internationally to survive, especially in less developed countries like Russia in 1917. Trotsky also promoted a vision of workers' democracy, arguing for Soviets, workers' councils, and opposing the growing bureaucratic control he saw under Stalin. After being expelled from the Communist Party and exiled, Trotsky continued to critique the Soviet regime and founded the Fourth International in 1938 to coordinate revolutionary movements worldwide. For Marxists disillusioned with Stalinism, Trotskyism offered a revolutionary, internationalist alternative focused on continuous global class struggle and democratic socialist governance. Maoism, the adaptation of Marxism-Leninism developed by Mao Zedong in early and mid-20th century China, a country marked by warlords, foreign invasion, and a largely agrarian economy. Unlike classical Marxism, which prioritizes an urban industrial proletariat, Maoism elevates the peasantry as the decisive revolutionary force, pursuing protracted people's war from rural-based areas and applying the mass line, from the people, to fuse leadership with grassroots experience. Seeking to accelerate development and remake social relations, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 1962, a disastrous campaign of collectivization and crash industrial schemes that produced famine and millions of deaths. Maoism also promoted continuous revolution to prevent bureaucratic ossification, culminating in the Cultural Revolution's upheavals. For a fractured, semi-colonial China, Maoism offered a distinctly national route to socialism, substituting peasant mobilization, guerrilla strategy, and ideological rectification for orthodox proletarian insurrection doctrines. Revisionism. Revisionist and Marxist thought originated with Edward Bernstein in late 19th century Europe, arguing capitalism could be gradually transformed through elections, unions, and welfare reforms rather than insurrection. It de-emphasized the dictatorship of the proletariat and embraced political pluralism, liberties, and mixed economies. After 1956, parties endorsing de-Stalinization, peaceful coexistence, and market mechanisms were labeled revisionist. Anti-revisionist, associated with Maoism and Marxism, insisted only a vanguard-led revolution, democratic centralism, and centralized planning could defeat bourgeois power, condemning détente and liberalization as paths back to capitalism. This divide reshaped communist strategy: parliamentary roads versus revolutionary rupture, socialist democracy versus one-party rule, hybrid welfare economies versus command planning and mass mobilization. Internationally, it produced divergent lines on alliances, national roads, and armed struggle, setting the fault lines that structured left politics throughout the 20th century. Castroism took shape in mid-20th century Cuba, a nation marked by U.S. economic dominance, the Batista dictatorship, and deep rural inequality. Fidel Castro's 26th of July movement began as a broad nationalist revolt, and Castro himself did not initially identify as a communist. His early program emphasized anti-imperialism and democratic reform. After the 1959 victory, and especially following the U.S. Bay of Pigs invasion and the Soviet Union's embrace, he openly adopted Marxism-Leninism, aligning Cuba with the USSR. Distinct from classical Marxism and from orthodox Leninism's urban, party-centered model, Castroism relied on rural guerrillas and charismatic leadership to seize power. Rather than large-scale executions of opponents, the regime often exiled dissidents to Florida, creating a major diaspora. In later debates within the global left, some Marxist critics labeled Castro a revisionist, arguing his pragmatic policies diluted strict Marxist-Leninist orthodoxy. Guevarism grew from the life and writings of Argentine revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara during the 1950s and 1960s, amid rising anti-imperialist struggles across the global South. Distinct from classical Marxism's focus on an urban proletariat and from Soviet-style party centralism, it advanced the FOCO theory. A small, mobile guerrilla band could ignite mass revolutionary consciousness and inspire peasant uprisings. Che played a pivotal role as a guerrilla commander in Fidel Castro's Cuban Revolution through 1956 to 59, helping to overthrow Batista's dictatorship. He later promoted worldwide revolution and championed moral incentives, revolutionary duty over material rewards, as the basis for building socialism. In 1967, while attempting to spark an uprising in Bolivia, he was captured and executed, becoming an enduring global symbol of rebellion and self-sacrifice for anti-imperialist movements. Titoism describes the socialist path forged by Josip Broz Tito in post-World War II Yugoslavia, a country devastated by occupation and composed of many ethnic groups. After leading the communist partisans to victory in 1945, Tito initially aligned with the Soviet Union, but famously broke with Stalin in 1948 to protect Yugoslav independence. Distinct from orthodox Marxism-Leninism, Titoism combined workers' self-management, enterprises run by employee councils, with a mixed socialist economy that allowed limited market mechanisms and foreign trade, including active commerce with Western nations. Tito promoted the slogan of brotherhood and unity to bind Yugoslavia's diverse nationalities within a single federal state. His willingness to blend markets and state control sparked an ongoing debate over whether he was a Marxist revisionist. As critics claimed, his model softened core revolutionary principles, while supporters viewed it as a pragmatic national road to socialism, democratic socialism. A broad socialist tradition that arose in late 19th and early 20th century Europe, when expanding suffrage, industrialization, and strong labor movements made gradual political reform seem possible. Distinct from classical Marxism, which envisioned a proletarian revolution and a transitional dictatorship of the proletariat, democratic socialists seek to achieve socialism through parliamentary democracy, civil liberties, and multi-party elections. They advocate extensive social ownership through public enterprises, cooperatives, or regulated markets, combined with robust welfare states, universal health care, and strong labor rights. Democratic socialists stress that socialism must be inseparable from political democracy, rejecting authoritarian models such as Stalinism and emphasizing human rights and pluralism. While Karl Marx analyzed the potential for capitalism to adapt, he remained skeptical that civil reforms alone could end class exploitation, seeing them as insufficient substitutes for a fundamental transformation of economic power.